Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Fire Horse Academy. Used to be known as Trinergy Awakens Naturally. Welcome regardless. So it's the middle of the night, and I woke up with an inspiration of how to understand something. And so as I'm working through and channeling this, I was guided to just begin a video. So what I want to talk to you about is when we have recurring themes. There's a lot of misunderstanding in working with spiritual mechanics and spiritual science. There's a lot of misunderstanding about how it is that we're dealing with karma and individual people. If we pull the picture out to a little bit more of an expansive view and we consider patterns being more global, more cosmic, if you will, getting a broader awareness. By opening up our awareness and looking from multiple perspectives, we are gaining height, right? That is what is in fact will raise our vibration, is even the willingness to see other perspectives. Other perspectives would be different vantage points within myself and eventually different vantage points within someone else, because what we are seeing in the reflection, the mirroring, the projection, all of the different return engagements with people, what we're seeing is, unless we are healed within us and we truly can identify all parts of us and we are integrated within ourselves, unless that's really true for us, what we're going to be observing in another person is going to be something, excuse me, either we haven't enough compassion for yet, or we're being called to find the place in us that understands compassion better to offer it in that moment, even if we do feel empathetic. Sometimes it's about learning a boundary. There are many reasons that we are faced with something. However, it is always for our good, and it is always meant to teach us in some way our sovereignty and how it is that we're creating collaboratively with those that are showing some facet of a perspective of the greater collective we, which is me, which is you. We are the collective field, the unity field, the unified field. So when we're interfacing with other people and we're having these patterns circle back around, if we understand the bigger picture and the patterning, and we understand that if we do, through the reincarnation or through the generational cycles, that is what some people would call generational curses, and some would call them generational trauma. I call it all the same baggage because it weighs just the same, whether you weigh it in kilograms or you weigh it in pounds, it's a whole full infinite ton of really heavy stuff on the human being whose soul is struggling against the weight of all of that oppression, because it remembers a much more source memory of itself being very pure, capable, free, and in that unified field where I separate into a divinity that I choose to be in, and we drop down into this illusion and we're given lots of opportunities to forget that fact. So when we're seeing other people, when we're dealing with our lives, when we're looking within ourselves, anywhere where we're feeling that discomfort, that anger, that sadness, that something that is knocking us off our square, or we're having trouble finding a square that isn't chaotic or constantly moving, that is something to do within us that is calling forth an occurrence out here that says, look, your autonomy isn't fully guaranteed to you just yet, because we have to work through some darkness right here. So grab my hand, Spirit says, your soul says, your team says, your guardian angels, your guides, whatever you choose to believe in. Grab my hand and let's walk through this liminal space land that sucks ass, and we know that. However, that is how we grow this skill, little one, to grow the courage and the ability to grab my hand and know that this part of you is what that is always going to show. When we have an untoward reaction, that is always within us to begin the investigation of where the source is within us that identifies with that, needs to empathize with it, needs to work with it to understand it, needs to put a boundary on it, needs to engage with it in the healthiest way, the most functional way, and the most logical way for that part of us to be able to make the next step successfully. Oftentimes we're getting information in these threads where we try something new at the same level that we've tried it before in the old pattern, or in the old arrangement of the same pattern rather. We're on our third marriage and we can't quite figure out what's going on here. Or we've had 6 jobs in a row that we've been terminated from, and yet, it's always something external to us that is the commonality there. And the most obvious thing is always going to be to look at us. However, that's a very difficult inventory and will not be the most obvious thing if we really shy away from having to do that work, or we don't want to, because those threads of information and those revisitations are difficult when we come back around on a revisit of a pattern that we're suddenly coming to realize is, oh yeah, this might be me. And it is always ours to take a hold of that, because that's the way that we ride to our own freedom, is we wrestle the demon, as it were. We grab a hold of that part of us, whatever it is, and kiss it, hug it, and really truly embrace it as understanding with the greatest compassion possible, and seeing it everywhere out here, thousands of opportunities a day to pass this backwards and forward and get on our way. That is when we can translate that in here, and we can translate in here, we can translate that out there. And that open causeway, if you will, that open freeway between head and heart, heaven and earth, has been made. The blockage has been cleared. Whatever the damage was, the hurt, the pain, the trauma, whatever that was that clogged that particular roadway, that particular energetic pathway, that has been cleared. And there could be zillions of them. There could be 3 more. I have no idea. I just know that I quit counting a long time ago, quit worrying about why there was a blockage, and only that I have the answer of how to fix it, because it is always to come inside me and ask myself, what am I bothered about inside of me? What has an incomplete arc inside of me that needs to come back to harmony immediately for this to get out of the dissonance that is jarring every little part of me that is disturbed within me. So I want to think about this in terms of that emotional arc. If we think about energy being on an energetic arc as well, that's how we can start looking at the energy mechanics, okay? That an emotional arc is the reason we have trouble, pardon me, let me start over, see if I can gather. An emotional arc would be the beginning of an emotional reaction or response, the crest of it, the peak, etc., and then the denouement of the story comes down and it's over, and we're back to our baseline. That is the emotional arc. It's the cycle. It's a very common cycle in music. It would be the crescendo and then the decrescendo, etc. So it's common. This isn't something brand new to think of. And so in energy has arcs as well, especially if it's well directed and it's going through that cycle of birth and rebirth. And when we know how to work that, we understand how to go with that cycle when it comes back around again and again and again. Excuse me. That the emotional arc, when we are brought to a situation that is reminding us of an ow, inside of us, that emotional arc, when we understand the energetic arc has come to a it's hit a dam, and because it hasn't been able to complete itself, it didn't get to back to its harmonic resonance. It didn't get to the end of the chapter. It got to the middle and stopped. and left you on a cliffhanger. If we get left on cliffhangers over and over and over again, hanging chads build up into little tiny molehills that turn into mountains eventually, and that ends up being the blockage that we are working to set free. So the way that happens is when we're brought to that pattern in our lives again, that cycle has come back around again, asking us to die to the old and birth to the new. The way that we can do that is to work that emotional arc through properly. And it may not be in the moment, and oftentimes it isn't. Sometimes it's going back in history and reviewing something and doing that emotional arc at that point in our memory of time. However, eventually in the moment, we get to where we can fulfill the emotional arcs of all the past have already been fulfilled, and we can then answer the emotional arc of what's happening right in front of us. It's a little difficult to do simultaneously and impossible to do if we have no idea that we even need to be doing so. So if we feel unfulfilled, if we feel frustrated, if we feel like hanging chads are everywhere, those are the places that are indicators of we have emotional arcs that are unfulfilled somewhere. We have energetic loops that haven't been brought all the way to closure. They're just hanging and they're flapping, on either side, 11, in the breeze a little funny. So we feel scattered and fragmented, and we are. And so if we bring the concept of spiritual mechanics and our emotionality together for a moment and understand that one of the best ways that we can work with our own energy is through our emotional understanding, our emotional body, and our ability to marry the heart and the mind together. That's why it's so powerful to have that heart-mind connection and heart-mind coherence, and why it is so coveted by others around us, all the way up the very primitive apex predator tree. That makes us very strong and vital in our own divine energy and our own divine expression of that. And so when we separate from that and we only are in one side of the brain or the other, we have a disconnection from the greatest power, which is as above, so below, which means I know how to create magnificently, powerfully, beautifully, and it means I've worked through all of the emotional arcs of me. I've gone through the cycle of spring, summer, fall, winter, and then the emergence again. I've gotten familiar enough, and I'm okay enough, and I'm very much in the sacred flow of what it is to be my very own death doula, to wish those old cycles out, refinish, go back and redo rather, and finish the emotional arcs and come through those winters, so that during those periods of frost and cold where I'm doubting myself and thinking, oh my gosh, I don't think I really know what I thought I did. Those moments when I walk myself through, I give myself the ability to, hey, take me through this liminal space, please, whatever it is that I believe in, and grow that faith immensely. That continues to happen, and it closes that loop, and I'm able to finish the winter out, that cold second or two, that cold week or two, that cold month, however long it takes time, however much it literally takes on time. And it matters not, because time is infinite, in that once we make it to these new understandings and these new plateaus in energy, those cycles, when we rebirth and we shoot up into a brand new understanding of ourselves from that last winter, and we're not just slogging our way through the same level winter we did before, back into the same spring, back into the same summer, blah, blah, blah. And when we've done the work and we have really marched ourselves through very assertively, crawling, bloody, tattered, torn maybe, and looking rough, however, we know we are marching ourselves through sacred land of our own desecration, our own tower moments that we ourselves are looking through the remnants of and picking up the pieces of. That is just a different way of being the birth doula into the new cycle. That emotional arc is now complete. And when we finish enough of those, and we've proven to our own selves and reminded our own soul again of, hey, I have perfected my skill well enough now that I'm ready to play at the next level, bring it on. And then we start dancing a little harder. We might look a little sloppy. However, it's proof positive that you got this, you understand what's going on, and you've got the game here. You're onto something. It's just a matter of the remembrance of that and continuing to grow the skill and to take the moments when they come back around to be using those as therapeutic interventions for those parts inside of us that we're calling out to some broken person out there to help you help them figure out where it appears that you're broken. We are not broken. However, the broken behavior of other people is what triggers the broken parts of behavior within us, those parts of us that utilize broken behavior because that's what they know. Those two trauma parts speak, and when they speak, it isn't a matter that they can't speak necessarily. It's that when they speak, one of us needs to understand that the trauma part can speak, it can call out, and it could have brought you here, that's fine. I'm the one that's going to answer the door though, and we'll see if this trauma part is going to get in here for some more conversation. We'll see about that. Hold on a second. And then I can check within me and find out, are we ready to move through this density? Are we ready to move past this particular frequency, this chad, this hanging chad of misery? Are we ready to move past this and allow this trauma bond to leave the door closed? No, thank you. We're going to pass on that. That's going to be a no for me, dog. Thanks, you know. To pass on it and let that go without worrying about it, without being concerned, and without paying any attention, going all kinds of detached and unavailable to even consider it any further. And that shoots us up, you know, 1, 2, 3, however many steps, doesn't matter. It takes us out of the rut we're in. It changes the frequency immediately. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in, and remember to get within your skin because you're divine. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it knows how to close all those cycles, all those emotional arcs, all of those sensations where imagine you were in a passionate moment with a person that you just love and adore and cherish, and you get to the peak of that and you're just told, yeah, sorry, that's going to have to be the end. No more of that. And that happened again and again and again. Imagine the pent-up energy, especially that raw stuff, that pent-up energy, the pent-up emotions having to do with how we feel about all that pent-up energy, and the unexpressed explosion within every single time that a hanging chad was created in our bodies, in our minds, in our psyches, our souls, our finances, our public persona, our social media, our jobs, our relationships, our education. Pick one. Doesn't matter. Think of all of that stuff as it's down there, powder kegs everywhere. Excuse me. Which is why you have people that look real uptight and have no idea how to discharge that literally anymore, because the ways that used to work, all of them don't work the same way, nor will they, because they're headed the wrong way. So anyway, as I said, take care, and I'll see you again next time. Goodbye, friends. Mwah.